So I was working at Center Staging as an audio tech, as a studio supervisor, and kind of had management responsibilities over the studio spaces there. And one day, my good friend, who we ended up doing a whole audio company with, he came into my office and he was like, hey, he's like, my friend just called me and Kanye's looking for a front of house engineer. He's like, man, I don't know if I could do it, but like, maybe you could do it. Do you think you could do it? And I'm like, I don't know if I'm qualified for this. I don't know if I can actually do this, but I want to give it a shot. And so I was like, yeah, tell him I'm interested. Tell him I can do it. And so he calls his friend, and it was kind of a whole chain of like, I tell my friend, he tells his friend, and he tells actually it was like 3 more levels before I got to like Kanye's guy. So it was like a whole chain of like 5 people before I got to like Kanye's guy. And so he gave him my info, and I think a couple of days later I got a phone call, and he was like, hey, this is so-and-so with Kanye, got your name from blah, 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 and was wondering if you could come by. We've got this new thing we're doing. We're looking for a front of house engineer. And I said, yeah, would love to. And so he was like, all right, who have you worked with? And at that point, I had done some work with Steve Perry from Journey. He was doing like a comeback solo tour, and I was mixing monitors for him. I'd done some work like mixing monitors with BB Rexa. I'd recorded live performances for Kelsey Ballerini, and I'd done mixing monitors for a bunch of different people. Elton John's band came in. I did monitors for them for like a week one time, as well as some like American Idol and The Voice rehearsals. So kind of had my feel for kind of the professional industry and how to interact with artists and all this. And so he was kind of interviewing me a little bit, like, who have you worked with? I was kind of giving him some names, and he was like, all right, well, we'll let you know. I didn't hear from him for like a week. And so I was like, oh, I should follow up. So I kind of texted him, and it just happened to be that they had hired somebody else and then fired them within that week. And he was like, actually, you know what? Why don't you come by the spot? That was literally what he said, like, come by the spot and check it out, see if it's for you. So I stopped by, texted him, I was like, hey, what's the spot? Like, where's the spot? And we go to this little office building, and as I'm like walking in, it's like everything's under construction. There are people up on ladders, like building things and like doing drywall and creating this whole scene there. And I get to the room. I haven't really found the production manager who like kind of invited me there. I haven't found him yet, but I'm kind of looking around and kind of stumble into a guy who's like about to pull a console out. And I was like, oh, are you with Kanye? Are you engineering? Or like, he was like, well, I'm just filling in. He's like, I just, kind of get things started. And he was from Chicago. He was like the old front of house engineer that was just like here to hand off some gear and then take off. And so I was like, is somebody like setting all this up, or like what's going? He's like, no. He's like, I just kind of brought all this stuff here, and there were still microphones in boxes. Their like cable still had the cable ties on it. It had like everything needed to be like cut open and prepped. He's like, yeah, but the band's showing up in like, I think it was either an hour or 2 hours. And I was like, wow, that's like, you're gonna need all of that time to like set this thing up. And I still haven't found the production manager yet. I was like, man, I'm sure. I look over and I see him, and he's like on the phone or something. I was like, I won't bother him. Let's just get to work. So I hadn't been hired at this point. I hadn't been told, I hadn't been given a rate or a pay or you're officially in. It was just kind of like, hey, come check it out. But I saw a need. I saw that something needed to be done, and I knew how to do it. So I just jumped in. I started unboxing things. I started putting mic stands together. I started running cable, and sure enough, the band starts trickling in. I'm like, all right, what do you need? What's your setup? And kind of getting the whole lowdown from each band member. And I had no idea what I was walking into, or like what the gig was, or if this was like a new tour, if this is something totally different. Yeah, so I got everything set up, and then I had to go to this other gig. I was mixing at this festival, and so I finally kind of found the production manager. Was like, hey, everything's set up. You're pretty much good to go for rehearsal. I got to take off to this gig that I'd booked before, but you should be good to go. And he was like, looked around. I was like, oh, wow, what? He's like, that's amazing. Okay, well, go to your gig, and can you come back tomorrow? I was like, yeah, sure. What time? He's like, 7 a.m. And it's like, okay. So it was kind of one of those things where like, don't ask too many questions. Don't ask what you're doing tomorrow. Just keep showing back up. And I did. So I came back the next morning, and it was, I think it was like the 3rd Sunday service, early in January 2019. So I kept coming back. I kept being asked to come back every day. Kind of we'd do a service, and at the end of the day, I was like, all right, it's done. And he'd kind of come back over and be like, all right, good job today. Can you come back tomorrow? And so I came back tomorrow, and there was always something else to do. There's always a new setup. We had amps coming in. We had new speakers coming in. We had to set up a whole new rig. We had subs coming in, and they were constantly rebuilding and building the space. You know, for a little while, I was like, all right, who's the God of this? Is this a Christian thing? Is this a New Age thing? Is this something totally different? As it kind of progressed, it really seemed like things clarified. Kanye had a lot of people around him, you know, influencing him on all this, and he was looking to pastors, he was looking to Christian teachers and leaders for advice on how to do this thing, how to run it well, and then the teachings were about Jesus, and they would quote scripture, and increasingly, I think the whole thing was part of a journey of a lot of people finding faith and actually finding Jesus, looking for something spiritual and not knowing exactly what to look for, but actually finding Jesus through the process. So I just kept coming back. I kept saying yes, and probably like a week in, I still haven't been given a job yet. I still haven't been told how much I'm getting paid or what my hours are, or if I'm actually officially working there or ever gonna get paid. But I just kept showing up, like, don't ask too many questions, just keep coming, and there'll be a time to address that. So I think it was like day 7 or 8, and some of the days I was working at the studio all day from like 9 a.m. to like 4 or 5 p.m. and then I would work all night at Kanye's spot, either prepping cable, making cable, building rigs to do the next iteration of the Sunday service. And so I might sleep 2 or 3 hours a night during this first couple weeks where I was still working there and doing the Kanye thing. The production manager comes out and was like, hey, can you run Pro Tools? Like, you know how to run Pro Tools? And I was like, yeah, totally, of course. Like, all the confidence, like, I was like, yeah, which I did take a class in college, but at that point, that was like 5 or 6 years ago, and it was a very beginner level, like 5 generations of Pro Tools ago. And I'd used it a little bit for recording, like live music stuff. But I was like, yeah, of course I can do that. So he's like, awesome. He's just like, yes, this is just like the best thing ever. You can do live, you can do Pro Tools. This is amazing. And I was like, he's really excited about this. I wonder what he like actually wants me to do. And I'd never had a studio job to this point. It'd all been like live audio, concert shows, rehearsals. He's like, all right, we got a rapper coming in tonight and gonna need you to do the vocal session for him. And I was like, oh no, my heart dropped again. And I was like, all right, I don't know if I'm ready for this. I don't know if I have what it takes. I don't know if if I can actually do this. And so I was like, okay. So I kind of like nervously like follow him to the storage closet, and he's getting out like all the outboard gear. He's getting out like actual compressors, which I've used, everyone's using them, as you say, in the box. Everyone's using plugins to do all these things. And these are like the actual like compressors, the actual EQ units and preamps and all that. And so I'm like, all right, I've never actually like hooked any of this stuff up in physical reality before. And he just keeps handing me things. He's like, all right, we're gonna need to set this up, and like I've got a whole like cart full of stuff, and my hands are full, and I'm taking it to the room. And he's like, all right, just like, you got a couple hours, get it all set up. He's gonna be in at 5. And so I'm like, oh man. So I'm like sweating, I'm like watching YouTube videos, I'm like trying to get it all set up. I kind of figured out I had enough knowledge to know what to do to get it going, and testing everything, testing the mic, recorded myself a little bit, just checking in, haven't seen anyone come over here yet. And he's like, all right, hold on, let me check. And so wait a couple more minutes, and 5 minutes later he texts me back. He's like, hey, all right, I just checked in. They're actually not coming today. They're gonna come tomorrow, same time, so just be ready tomorrow. So I was like, phew. It's like, that gave me just enough time. So I sat there and watched YouTube videos for like 2 more hours on like how to run a session, how to set this up, how to get everything dialed in. I recorded myself a bunch. I like put tracks in there and got it like all jiving. I was like, all right, cool, I can do this. So I went home, came back early the next day, did some more practice, did some more like getting everything ready, and there were a bunch of other tasks to do, so I kind of got distracted for a while. Anyway, the guy ends up showing up. I was like, all right, here we go. Like, this is it. And I'm sitting there, and he walks in, and he's got a little entourage, and he's sitting there, and I was like, all right, so what are we working on? And he's like, you tell me. And like, I hadn't been giving any files. I didn't have any information. I didn't have like anything. And I'm just like, oh no. Now what? Now what do I do? So I'm like, okay, I'll grab some tracks. Let me see. So I like texted the production manager, like, hey, do we have any like tracks that need worked? Like, what are we working on? And he's like, he's like, yeah, get some stuff from the everything folder. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay. So I like go on the computer, and I'm like, there's nothing on here. It's like a rental computer. There's like, it's literally been like totally zeroed out. Like there's no files, no music, no audio. And I like kind of look in and he's kind of like waiting for me to do something. I was like, all right, I don't see an everything folder anywhere. And he's like, oh, in the main studio. And I was like, oh, I don't even know where that is. I've never been there. So I was like, okay. I was like, oh, all right, so we just got to go to the main studio and we'll grab some stuff over there. And this guy's like super disgruntled. He's like not having it. He like doesn't want to move and go to like a different place. But he begrudgingly like follows me around out of the building to another building. And I get over there, I was like, all right, so the door's locked, you know, the computers are locked. It was just a series of like constant obstacles of like even getting to this folder. Anyway, we got in, I got some files, I played them for him, and he picked a few. I kind of just like played a bunch of them, and he's like, yeah, all right. So grabbed the files and like, all right, we got to go back to the other room. He's like, we can't just do it here. I was like, no, I didn't know. I don't think I'm allowed here. I don't know if we should be in here. I just got to get the files. We'll go back over there. So again, he's like totally disgruntled, doesn't want to move. So I pull one up and put it in the session, just put it on repeat, and I'm playing it. And he's just kind of back there doing his thing, not saying anything. And I just kind of play it again, keep looping it. And I think I was about to fall asleep by the time he like finally, all of a sudden at one point he just like walks up to the mic and just starts like rapping, and I'm like, oh shoot. And I just like had to hit record real quick and like capture it before he like gets there. It's like, all right, let's do that again. And did it one more time, and he did that with like 2 more songs, and that was my first session. It was literally like this whole story of like every single day I would just be like, all right, God, if you want me here, then help me find a way. And so I'd met one of the other like main studio engineers by this point, and he was kind of showing me all the Pro Tools tips and tricks and shortcuts, and like kind of getting me integrated on their system. Meanwhile, we're still doing the Sunday service, so we're traveling, doing Sunday service. How much can you get done in one day, and how many different like audio obstacles can you jump over to like get a good end result? With also being given as little information as humanly possible to get it done. And at this point, it's just like Kanye's in like, he's like super Christian mode. He's like, everything I do is for Christ. And so like watching his whole faith journey through that was extraordinary. We were having Bible studies all the time. We were having like, you know, worship events. We were doing the Sunday service and doing rehearsals, and sometimes you just feel like the presence of God just like so powerfully and so tangibly during the rehearsals, and there was just like this beautiful chorus and choir, and the singing was angelic. I had friends that were like working on the crew that definitely didn't believe in God at all, but they would come and they would work, and they'd be crying while they're working because they're just like I don't believe in this, I don't believe in church, but if this is church, I want to be here all of the time. And so it was amazing to see friends kind of be like, what is this? What am I feeling? What, you know, and seeing people who literally didn't believe in God actually feel God and feel the Spirit moving in these places. This would happen almost daily, I guess, actually, where it'd be something that's like just outside of my comfort zone. I was just getting comfortable with like the tasks I had and the duties and the gear I was using and all that. And Kanye would come in and we'd be working on an album thing, and he'd be kind of playing it for some people, and then he'd be like, all right, actually, what if we took this section from this song and put it in this song? And they're 2 totally different keys, so we have to like key shift everything and slide like the bridge from this song to make a new chorus for this other song. And this happened one time where I was like, all right, this is just barely beyond my like ability to do in 2 minutes. And I'm like, I'm sure I could figure it out, but there's so much pressure. So we come to this moment, I'm sitting there, I'm in the hot seat with Kanye. They'd kind of given me more confidence and more like, hey, actually sit in and do Kanye sessions, not just kind of some of the guest artists and writers and all that, which I was doing before. And he asked me for this kind of nearly impossible task. And I was the only one that was supposed to be there today. The main engineer was supposed to be out with his kids, doing a family thing out of town. And as soon as he asked me this, I was like, God, please help me. Like, there's got to be a way. And he slips in the back door, the lead engineer. And he's like, oh, dude, what did he just ask you? And he's like, oh, I want to move this thing from this song into this song and like change the key into it. He's like, oh, no worries. And he would like hit the shortcuts. And I was like, all right, wow. And he just like did it in about 20 seconds and had it in there, and then like played it, listened to it, and checked it. And then he slips on. He was just here to like grab a cable he had forgot or something, and he slips right out. Kanye turns back around. He's like, all right, did you do it? And he had seen the other engineer there too, so he knew he was there, and he kind of helped me with it. So it wasn't like he thought did I totally do it? But he's like, all right, did you guys do it? He's like, yeah. So he plays it. He's like, oh, that's amazing. That's perfect. Like, wow, that was fast. And then he just like totally forgot about the song and then went about having his conversation with somebody else. But it was just these moments that were just like, all right, this is it. This is the last moment. Like, I'm going to get fired right now because I'm not qualified to do this. And it was just that kind of thing over and over again of like learning and growing at an exponential level, and these like Olympic-sized challenges of having to get a whole show worth of stuff on top of a mountain where you can't get a semi-truck, you can barely get like a small U-Haul truck. The challenges were monumental and immense, and I was pushed to like the very limits of what I could do and what I knew how to do or could even understand. And soon I found myself in like the second engineer position, and then he asked the head engineer to take on some different tasks. Like, Josh, we need you to finish the album. I need you to take the lead on finishing the album these last couple weeks. And we still had a bit of work to do. This is the Jesus is King album. It's like, man, all right, here we go. This is like my first studio job. I don't know what I'm doing, but like, I'm gonna do the best I can. I'm gonna like, logically, what makes sense? Or like, all right, let's like make a board. So I had this whole like huge whiteboard we brought out and put a list of all the songs and like what's done on it production wise, what's done like vocal wise, what's done instrumental wise, what's done mix wise, and kind of made this whole like master sheet of like, all right, what do we need to do to finish it? And we had all the songs like put up on the like cabin walls we were working in, as far as like the song, the title, the tempo, the energy of it, and then everybody's kind of votes on the song as far as like which songs are going to make the final album. And I think that actually ended up being like a huge help to like everybody to just be able to visualize like what do we need to get done, because we were kind of like tripping a little bit, staggering through getting this album done. I hope a lot of people were encouraged by it. I've heard some stories. I was there in the middle of it and saw friends that were in it and saw friends that didn't believe in God be touched by it. And the music was incredible as far as the Sunday service and being in the events. And sometimes it was a challenge. Sometimes it didn't always sound good because of the challenges that we faced. But it was this just incredible, for me, incredible journey of like building my faith and my trust in God and seeing God come through every single day when I'd just be like, God, if you want me here, help me find a way. A story of God qualifying the unqualified and using people that you wouldn't have thought would be the first choice. And it was definitely hard on friendships. It was definitely hard on relationships. Definitely had to scale back my like kind of friend group and core group quite a bit because of it. And I think at times it was definitely, you know, physically, mentally maybe unhealthy, but I think I would do it again. And I think the end result of just that like extreme amount of challenge and growth and just seeing God and faith in God and be like, man, God's going to show up. And again, not everyone operates the same way I do. Not everyone operates in this kind of method, and that's okay. And that's totally okay. This is my story, and this is how I felt God has worked in my life, and yours is going to be totally different. So I hope my story encourages you to be diligent with the little things and be ready, because God's going to open up some amazing doors for you.
Hey production gurus, if you liked that video and you want to see more, click that subscribe button.